Hey guys, this is Jeremy from Production Den. Today I'm going to be walking you through how to use FL Studio. I'm going to show you the basic workflow of the program and take you through what you need to understand to put together your first song. So let's go ahead and jump in. So when you're first starting out in FL Studio, when you open up the program, it can seem a little bit daunting because there's so many windows that might be open and you might be seeing a project that's been loaded into the program. And it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So I'm going to cover some of the basic controls that are up here and how we can kind of arrange our windows to make everything feel a little less daunting. So let's kind of start over here with the transport controls. These are your play and stop and record functions. The tempo for your song, you can drag this up or down depending on what you want to do. And then these buttons are things like creating a metronome. So when you're recording or doing something like that, you can have a click track involved with that. And then you have some options for when you're recording. And then over here is the time for the song. There's their snap parameters. And this is your pattern selection. As you start creating different patterns, these will show up down here of the different ones that you've actually created. And you can name them and do all those things. These buttons are for opening and closing certain windows. So this first button is for the playlist. If you look over here in this section, it'll actually give you hints. And over here, it'll give you the shortcut keys when you hover over something. So it says view the playlist, and if you click F5, it'll show you the playlist. And then to make it go away, you can click it again, bring it up. So the playlist window is where we put everything to arrange the song. And that's one of the final components before you go into mixing. And then this is the piano roll, which is where we're going to record or put together chords and melodies for different instruments that we're working with. This is the channel rack. This is where we're going to put all of our samples and our instruments. This is the mixer window. And this is for the actual browser that's on this side. And then there's some other features over here as well. So the basic rundown of this is it's kind of like going from greatest to smallest. So you'll bring all of your samples from here and you'll put them into your channel rack, and then all of those things from your channel rack will then feed into your mixer, which will feed into your master. And your playlist window is where you actually tell FL Studio exactly what to play when. So as you build your drum patterns or as you build different instruments or vocals or any of those kinds of things, you can tell FL Studio exactly what you want it to play at what time you want it to play. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have everything set up the same way. So let's go up here to File, let's go to New from Template, and let's go to Basic down here and just say no to the changes. And then let's make sure we have the same windows open. So click F5 to bring up the playlist window, click F6 to bring up the channel rack, click F9 to bring up the mixer. If you want to change your view on the mixer, yours might be a little bit different. You can look at these options right here. And I always choose extra large, and I do that because when you start adding effects, they can show up down here and you can easily get to them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So we've talked a little bit about the flow of how things work. So right now we have a couple samples that are preloaded in here. So there's a kick sample, a clap, a hat, and a snare. So let's talk about a couple things real quick. Over here on this left side, you'll notice that there are some numbers beside these. And these numbers correspond to these mixer tracks that are down here. So you'll see the number 4 here corresponds to insert 4 down here on the mixer track. So when I play this snare, you'll see it coming through here and then going to the master track, because I've told FL Studio to route it to channel 4 before it goes to the master track. And the reason that you route them to these individual inserts is so that you can put effects on them and process them in a certain way before they hit the master track. So this is advantageous when you want to make some tweaks to the sounds or the noises or whatever. So let's go ahead and talk about adding in some other samples. So let's say that we want to add in a different kick drum and maybe a different hi-hat, and I'll show you a couple ways that you can do that. So we're going to go over here to this left side, we're going to click on packs, we're going to go down to drums, and we're going to go to kicks. And you can left click on that, or you can use your up and down arrows to go through and preview each one of those. So I'm going to left click and drag, and I'm going to put it here. So when I drag a sample into here, you'll notice that it doesn't route it to a mixer track automatically. Now you can use your left click and drag it up to drag it to the next mixer track. So let's go ahead and add in another hat. Let's go ahead and just grab this one. So this time I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say open in a new channel. Okay, so now, and I can adjust the volume of that down using this knob right here, which will let me adjust that volume of that sample. And then I'm actually gonna rename it and color it. So I right click on this and I say rename and color icon. I'm gonna call it hi-hat. And I'm gonna pick a color by left clicking here and then picking a red. And if I hit enter, you'll see that it shows up red, hi-hat, but it still doesn't have a channel. So there's something that you can do down here on the mixer track. You can take it to the next track right here. So I left click on this one, and then I hit Control and L. And what that does is take all the settings from this channel and maps them to this mixer. And that can be helpful when you have maybe a group of instruments like drums. You color code them all the same way. It'll help you keep organized. So let's go through here really quickly. Let's do the rename color and icon. If I open this up and click F3 and then hit enter, it's going to automatically do it in that red color because that was the last color that I picked. So hit F3 again, rename, hit F3, rename, hit F3. So now all of my drums are that same color. So I'll left click on the kick, and then I'm going to hold down my shift key, and I'm going to click on clap, hat, snare, and this other kick. I'm going to go down to my mixer track and click on this first one, and then I'm going to press Control, Shift, and L. And what that's going to do is map in the names and the colors from each of these tracks to its own individual track, which is nice when you have a couple different instruments that you want to really quickly load into your mixer. So now you'll see that all the samples are routed with the names and the colors that the same way that they are on the channel rack. And this will help you keep organized as you start putting a song together. So let's go ahead and move on to making a simple beat. And what we're going to do to make a simple beat is actually create a pattern. So that's what we were talking about with this window up here. This is the pattern. So I'm going to create a pattern by using these buttons over here. So I'm just going to fill in every first one of these different colors. So there's 4 beats in this bar, and there's 4 bars in this particular pattern. So I'm going to do the first beat on each of those bars for the kick, and then I'm going to do the second one for the snare. So this is just a simple 4 to the floor. So let's play that. Okay, so now we've created our first pattern. So this is where the playlist comes into effect. So what you'll see is pattern 1 has showed up over here, and what we need to do is actually get it to show up in the playlist. So we're going to paint in pattern 1 for these first 2 on this track. And if I click play, you'll see that nothing's happening down here. It's just playing whatever is in the channel rack, but it's not playing in the song. But if I click song mode over here and click play, it'll play whatever I've told FL Studio to play down here. So let's go ahead and play it here. And you'll see it loops automatically. But I told it to play 2 of these patterns, and then it goes back to the front end of that. So we've created our first pattern. Let's go ahead and create a second pattern. And you can do this by clicking the plus button here, or you can actually do this drop down and say find next empty. You can use these shortcut keys like F4. So let's just do that really quickly. Let's click F4, and that's going to bring up this pattern window. Let's call this one drum 2. And let's color code it with that same red that we've been using for our drums so far. So now this pattern drum 2 has showed up. It's blank right now, but let's go ahead and fill that in. So we're going to do the same here, but we're actually going to add maybe a second snare hit. So let's go back to pattern and listen to what we've created. Oops, I jacked that one up. All right, so now we've created our second pattern, and if we come down to our playlist, we can select that pattern and then paint that in. So now I'm telling FL Studio play the first pattern twice and then play that second pattern that we just created once. So let's move back to song mode. And you can switch between these modes by clicking L or pressing L on your keyboard. So press L, it'll go between pattern and song mode. So we're in song mode, let's click play, or you can hit the space bar. Okay, so now we've created this basic structure. So let's come back to our channel rack. You can open that up by clicking F6, and that'll bring that window up or down. And so now we've created some drums, but now let's try to add in an instrument. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. So let's add two different instruments. We're going to add a bass and we're going to add a piano. So if I come down on this left side and click plugin database, generators, and then miscellaneous, I'll see this one called Boo Bass. And this is just a simple bass instrument that is available in FL Studio. And then the second way that I can add an instrument is to come down here and click this plus icon, and you'll see that Boo Bass is right there, but this time I want to actually grab the keys. So we're going to grab keys as our second instrument. So if I press these, you'll see that those are the notes. So let's come up here, let's rename this. So if you want to rename something, you just press F2, and let's just call this bass. Let's keep it that blue color, but let's come down here to keys. Let's press F2, and let's call that piano. And then let's change the color on that to maybe a green. Okay. So now we have our drum kit, and we have our bass and our piano. So we want to create a new pattern for our bass. So we can either come up here and click new pattern and call this bass line 1 or something, and we can press F2 and we can color code that with the same color. So let's go to blue. Now if we were just to use the same thing that we did here with the piano, you'll notice there's a little bit of a problem. So let's go back to pattern mode and we play this, and it's just playing a single note, and that's not necessarily what we want. So we'll right click on these and get rid of them, and what we actually need to do is go into the piano roll. So this opens up this window, and you'll see this keyboard on the left side, and this gives you all the notes that are available. So let's start out with this C, and you can change the note length by dragging on that left side or shorten it up like this. So I'm going to lengthen it out to where it's 2 beats, and we're going to go to F. Alright, so right now I have it going C to G to F to A. So let's hear what that sounds like. Alright, so when we get out of the piano roll by Xing it, you'll see that it's created something that looks a little bit different. And if you left click on this, it'll bring back up that piano roll. And you don't have to limit it to just these. You can create as long of a bass line as you want. But if I want to use that bass line now, you'll see that it's shown up down here as bass line 1, and I want it to maybe start after that first drum beat. So now I've told FL Studio to play pattern 1 for the drums, and then start pattern 1 again for the drums, but also play the bass line and then play pattern 2 on the drums. So if we go to our song mode, So now we've created a drum and a bass part. So let's go back to our channel rack by clicking F6. And then we're going to go down to piano, and we're going to go up here and do a new pattern. And this is going to be called piano 1. All right, so from here we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go into piano roll. So now we're going to come in here and we're going to create chords. Instead of just doing simple notes like we did for the bass, where we stretched these out and we did C, G, F, and A, this time we're actually going to create chords out of this, and you do that by just adding in your other notes that make up that chord. All right, so now let's play that pattern. So now we've created a basic chord structure that follows the bass line, and we're going to add that into our playlist. So you'll see that this one is called Piano 1. Let's go ahead and color code this one. So click F2 when you're out here. Let's color code it to that same green. So now when we come in here, let's paint the piano to come in at this point, and let's pick drum pattern 1 again, and then drum pattern 2, and then the same bass line. So now we're telling FL Studio, when we're playing this song, to play this first pattern by itself, then start the bass, and then at this point start the piano. And this is how you start creating the structure for a song. You don't necessarily have to do it all this way, but you're adding in different instruments and you're telling FL Studio when and where to play those things. So let's go ahead and hear what that sounds like right now. All right, so let's go back in here, and you'll notice that we don't have anything on the mixer track here. So let's open up our mixer, and let's come down here. Let's select this one by left clicking here, and then hold your shift, press this one here. Then we're going to come to the next available insert on this, and we're going to press Control, Shift, and L, and that's going to route our bass in here and our piano in here. And as we're playing through this, you'll notice that the piano is a lot louder than the bass. So I want to correct that a little bit, and you can do that by using this fader here, and that's going to control the volume, how much is going to that final master track. And this is where we start into the mixing process. I'm not going to cover a ton here, but just to say that you can cover your volumes, you can cover where it shows up in the panning, so you could turn your piano to go right, or you could adjust your volumes. You can make it more mono, so showing up in the middle, or spread it out more. Oops. And then you can also add different effects into that. So you could come in here and add EQs or compression or other things, and I won't get into that in this video because that's a little bit deeper. So this is the basic workflow that you're going to start using to create songs. You'll add in instruments and samples into this channel rack, and then you'll create these patterns, and then you'll arrange these patterns in a way to create a song. So you could create a whole bunch of different drum patterns, or a whole bunch of different bass lines, and a whole bunch of different layers for pianos. And then you're going to come in here and you're going to start arranging those things by how you want them to play during the song, and then you're going to mix them using these volumes and effects to create your master track. And once you're done, and once you're happy with the way that you've mixed it and the way that you've put it together, then you can export it as a song. And that's really the basics of how you put together a song in FL Studio. Well guys, I hope that was helpful for you in figuring out the basic workflow of FL Studio so that you can feel comfortable putting together your very first songs. And in the next few days, I'm going to be sending you some emails that give you information about how to go even deeper into FL Studio with things like using MIDI keyboards and sample packs and how to record vocals and all those things. So keep your eyes open for the emails that will be in your inbox soon. All right, see you guys later.